I'm your host, Leah Tyndale, and this is Note to Self. And I tell you what, one big note to self that I have a really massive problem with is trying to get a hobby. It's been a note that people have given me all my life. Leah, get a hobby. But no, I can't seem to do it. I always want to monetize it and turn it into something else. So to get some help so I can wrap my head around actually having a hobby and maybe even learning how to have fun and do some play without trying to monetize it is a very good mate of mine, Mike Drysdale. He joins me. Hello, good afternoon to you, Mike.
Hey Leah, good to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing so well, and I'm so stoked that you are going to take me on a journey of how to play, how to cultivate community. And I think you're the man for the job because your title at your business that you've started and created is Chief Mystery Officer, which in itself is very playful. And you're also a creative consultant and content strategist. You've worked in marketing and advertising, brilliant creative mind. And I would say a hobby dabbler. Would you say you've had a lot of hobbies over your time?
An enthusiast, so to speak. Yeah, multi-time, multi-hyphenate enthusiast. Yes. If anything, too many hobbies might be the problem. I think, though, on your prior note, I think the best part of starting your own company is being able to come up with your own title.
Mm.
So yeah, Chief Mystery Officer was the one for me.
Yeah, and I love it. I think it's brilliant. I don't know what I'd call myself, but right now my title would be Seeking a Hobby. Insert hobby here. So I'm so interested to know, though, around how your mind works. And as you said, an enthusiast of so many different things. What sort of led you into that world? Have you always been someone who's, tried new things and picked up different hobbies? Why have you been so interested in trying stuff out?
Yeah, I think the answer is twofold. I think first and foremost, I can blame my father.
Great.
My dad was ex-army, so he retired quite early from the army as on a TPI pension, terminally and permanently incapacitated. Meant that he had a bad back, couldn't do the work that he would have otherwise expected to be able to do. So you break it, you bought it. Basically, got to retire early and spent a lot of his time in retirement focused on hobbies, focused on motorcycle riding. He loved his Harley Davidsons, pistol shooting, going down to the pistol
Wow.
range, playing golf, surfing, um, different things like that. And time again, this is sort of a little bit off topic, but he would rise to the top of these organizations out of pure frustration for the fact that they weren't run as well as he would like them to. And then people would be like, well, Greg, why don't you do it? And he'd be like, oh God. And then he'd be the president or the treasurer or whatever. But unfortunately, his body eventually kind of gave out and stopped him from being able to do a lot of that stuff. But I think, the ways in which those passions and those hobbies that he engaged with so deeply, they brought him a lot of joy. They brought him a lot of community. They brought him a lot of fulfillment in what could have otherwise been quite an isolating experience, retiring as young as he did. So many of our relationships and so much of our time is spent at work, and so much of our identities oftentimes are built around work. And for me, I don't know, I've grown up with a pretty strange life thinking back on it. I went to a specialist drama high school. I got to do drama 4 times a week instead of
Ooh.
the usual two. And then I did two after school drama classes as well. And within that, you had warm up games in every single one of those classes. And straight out of high school, I went to Whopper and did 50 hours a week of acting classes as well. Lots of play based kind of creativity in the name of theater. Um, and so I think I've just been exposed to this idea of passion and creativity as a sort of operating system, so to speak.
I love that though. And I think it's obviously served you very well in all of your endeavors and the things that you've been trying to put out there in the world. And you give things a go in a way that I think a lot of people would be afraid to, which is absolutely brilliant and very, very inspiring. Do you think, though, you recognize the importance that kind of experimental play and even theatre and all that stuff was having in and how it was growing and shaping you at the time? Or is it only now, in retrospect, looking back, you're like, I can see how that's led to that?
Yeah, I think it's like in some ways I think it's conditioning, right? And it's just a muscle. And if you keep on working the muscle, then it's easier to call back on and recall. But at the same time, when you're in a sort of normie environment, sometimes the opposite happens, and you kind of go, oh gosh, these people aren't interacting the way that makes me feel comfortable. So now I have to kind of squeeze myself into a different shaped container, and that's awkward too. But I think to a degree as well, sort of my predilection for games and my predilection for play type environments is also a little bit based out of self-preservation, right? I find it much easier to connect with people and bond over a shared experience where I have something to fall back on if the conversation falls flat. We can refocus our attention and try to solve whatever it is that we're doing, as opposed to feeling like you're in a job interview and going, so tell me about yourself. Okay. Oh, right. And and why is that important to you? I have got better at listening as the years have gone on through focused work, but more of an activity guy.
Yeah, I love that too. And you mentioned briefly about, obviously the interactions you're having and the fact that you are focusing on the communication is a great way of communication. As a result, you build these communities around the things that you're trying. And in a lot of your work, you've done that, whether that has been through, advertising and marketing. I've always watched you and you've got these little subgroups going on wherever you may go. If we take a step back though and look really broadly, why do you think, and in the work, and we'll get to your amazing folklore business shortly, and I think it'll probably help explain to some people where we're going with all of this, but why do you think we lose that ability to play and to seek out, new things, challenge ourselves? Like I should try something new, but I'm probably not going to because I feel, I don't know, you're time poor, but then I don't know, you'd get nervous. Like folklore scares me a little bit. I'm going to be honest.
All right, well, we'll get to that at a
Yeah,
later
yeah.
point in time. Maybe off the call, we'll talk
Yeah,
it through.
great.
But no, I think on your point about why generally I think people struggle to hold on to this sense of play and this willingness to kind of give things a try, that I think nearly all of us have when we're kids is typically, I think it's around environment and culture. I think that culture, I've done a decent amount of work with this in terms of the strategy work that I've done and things like that, where I've interviewed workforces and tried to get to the bottom of cultural problems and try to solve them through communication solutions. And I think time and time again, what you find is that there is this system of rewards and punishments. And oftentimes we're not rewarded for being playful, for trying things that are a bit risky, for being creative. We're rewarded for towing the line. We're rewarded for being productive. We're rewarded for having predictable outputs that help push forward a prescribed idea. And that, I think, is largely because systems are often created in order to perpetuate the status quo. And play and creativity is dangerous and powerful in the fact that it can create paradigm shifts in the status quo. And so not only do we potentially risk looking like we are just simply wasting time by playing in the workplace where we spend, again, the majority of our time, but we're also possibly going to create an innovation that would completely upend things, make our manager not our manager anymore, and make our boss's possible business obsolete, etc. And so I do think creativity is dangerous. And I think that kids have this almost inoculated aura around them when they play that is so free of judgment that allows them to free associate and create worlds on a whim. And then whether it is through creativity scars or somebody kind of teaching them that creativity is a competition and not a strategy for enjoying existence, which is what I believe it is, they lose it because they go, oh, that's not for me because I can't win then because I'm not good
You
enough.
said something really interesting just there that I want to pause because I was like, oh, I've never heard that phrase before. Creativity scars. That sounds beautifully horrible. Can Can you unpack that for a bit more for me?
Yeah, I'm really bad because I can't remember where this originally this reference that I'm about to talk about came from. But I remember
Sure.
reading about a story which essentially said, you know, elephants can be green and have 11 trunks up until about the age of 6, and then somewhere along the line, a teacher is going to tell you that's not what an
Mm.
elephant looks like.
Yeah, wow.
And instead of being able to fully embrace your own Picasso self, we're taught to color between the lines. And there's another great story that I actually really, really love about Pablo Picasso himself, where he was riding on a train. There was a man that saw him, recognized him, said, "Pablo, I'm a huge fan of your work, but I have to say, my wife, she doesn't like it. She says, why don't your paintings look more realistic?" And he says to him, "Can I see your wife?" And he pulls out his wallet and he pulls out a photo of her and he hands it over to him. And Pablo says, "Why is she so flat?" Because real life is real life. A photo is a representation of real life. Art is something else entirely. There is no coloring between the
So
lines,
good. Yeah, that's brilliant. I've never heard that story before. I love it. I just also love that idea, like the creativity scars makes me also think of the amount of times you try things as a kid or as a teenager, and then you get shut down, you get bullied, you get embarrassed, and all of a sudden then you're like, oh, okay, that's a wound. We won't try that again. We won't get up in class and do the, creative song as part of my presentation because everyone laughed at me. And so I'm definitely not going to do that in the workplace.
Yeah, we really kind of take those early learnings to heart, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's so brilliant about the work that you're doing at the moment. And it just goes to show because folklore is really doing brilliantly. I don't even know how long you've officially been launched and running for, but you're already off the ground and being picked up by businesses all over WA. And so, just briefly, give us the synopsis of what folklore is so then we can bring everyone in on the journey about why I might be terrified to participate.
Sure, sure. So, Folklore, as a business, we create games that help improve team culture and cultivate psychological safety in teams. How we do that is through social deduction games. So, I've created 2 social deduction games. One is called Monster Hunt, which is our medieval fantasy themed social deduction game. And the other is called Hollywood Masquerade, which is like
Great.
our 1920s golden era of Hollywood style game. And so, what social deduction games are, for those that aren't sort of necessarily familiar with them, some examples would include Werewolf, Among Us, Mafia, Secret Hitler, the TV show The Traitors, even Survivor is kind of
Ah,
a form of
yes.
social deduction as well. So, typically speaking, in your sort of tabletop social deduction games, they're all built around the same premise, which is that you've got a group somewhere between 10 to 20 people, and a small minority of those people start the game evil and knowing who
Okay.
each other are. Everybody else has no idea what the heck is going on. And over the course of the game, normally split into 2 phases: day phase, night phase, eyes closed phase, eyes open phase. During the eyes closed phase, that's when abilities go off. So that's where
Mm,
people get information. They have the opportunity to protect people, to sabotage people, etc. And then during the eyes open phase is when you talk to one another and you
mm.
try to ask each other questions. Did you wake up last night? Did you get any information? What character are you? Are you the monster? Should we, form an angry mob and kill you? All of these sorts of things. And then as the town hall gets called to a head, that's exactly what we do, right? We open nominations. People hurl wild accusations around,
Great.
and ultimately decide if they're going to uh, form an angry mob and kill someone
Okay,
on
great.
suspicion of being the monster. And it is so much fun. It really, truly has been the joy of my life over the last just over 12 months. So we've been around for just over 12 months. We've had 43 5-star reviews. We've done games with Uniting, with Atlassian, with a startup here called the U Group, and we've got bookings with Bunnings, with others. So really excited about the way that it's building, but always happy to tell more people about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, so in my defense, the thing that scares me about it the most, and one day I will have to book it and I will, swallow the pill of fear and do it anyway. But the problem I've always found is this thing of trust, right?
Mm.
And so to come to something like that you're putting on, and I'm sure you host it beautifully and you create a very safe space. I have no doubts about that. But to then put myself into a position where I have to be in a character or I have to assume a role makes me so nervous. And I think it's because I also, theatre kid background. Sometimes you've done that and there was no acceptance of what you put out there. And then you're going into a room with people who necessarily aren't from, yeah, they're not theatre kids or they're not whatever. And it's like I'm doing a giant trust fall. And Mike, I don't know if I can leap and be caught by my peers. So
Yeah.
please, what would I do in that situation? And have you had that feedback? Like, are people coming into this nervous about like stretching that side of them again or trusting their colleagues?
I think what's great about the kind of format and the way that it plays out is a lot of people want to call what we do a role playing game, and it's
Mm,
it's really not. You are yourself.
okay.
So there's not
Okay.
there's not a situation in which you have to put on a funny voice, or like you can dress up
Okay.
if dressing up is fun for you, and lots of groups do. But ultimately this is completely down to your faculties. And so everybody kind of shows up as they are. Really, if anything, the kind of cognitive load for somebody playing the game is, can I tell who's lying to me, and can I sustain a lie for 75 minutes if I'm one of the characters, which is a kind of emotionally taxing experience. I have experienced so many different styles of play in these games. So we've conducted folklore, as I said, with Atlassian, with a group of hyper analytical, very typically introverted developers. And they treat the game as they even say it at the beginning, oh, this is a problem of one. So if everybody just shares the information all at once, we should be able to get the person on the first go. And
Oh
fortunately
wow.
enough, I've played with developers before. And so I created some sort of anti-developer rules that would absolutely screw them over if they tried to do that. I call them my Alex rules, because Alex is the developer that made me invent those rules at the beginning of the game.
that's
But
that's so
at the
good.
same, yeah, at the same time, I've played with advertising creatives. I've played with suits. I've played with all sorts of different people, introverts and extroverts. There are people who have won the game barely saying a word, and there are people who
Wow.
have won the game doing all the talking. But more often than not, they go down in a blaze of glory. They say one thing too many, and everyone's just like, I think I'm just sick and tired of hearing from you. It's time to vote you out. It's over.
Yeah, you go, pow, you're out.
Yeah.
Is there a group that you have noticed easily go into back into a childlike state? Like, is it the people who, I suppose, work say in advertising and marketing? Is that like a natural place where they play, or not so much? Maybe it's the teachers. I don't know. Is there a group that stands out?
I tell you what, like the, I think more that I think everybody has that inner child inside of them,
Yeah.
and it takes something to unlock it. And when you open up nominations for the first time in that town hall, and you encourage people to throw wild accusations at one another, and when somebody nominates somebody for the first time, and you say, do you have a case against them as to why you think that they're suspicious, why you think that they're the monster? That's when people just sort of it's just this feeling of like, I'm being a little bit, I'm breaking all the social rules. I'm being a little
Yeah.
bit, oh gosh. And the excitement in the room, the titillation of the drama, just becomes so evident in those moments. And it's really enjoyable to see. And that's oftentimes where you just go, oh, well, I don't have to do any, my work here is done. Everybody's having a
Yeah.
good time. But also, anytime that somebody gets nominated and the reason why the case against them is like, oh, they've been too quiet. I'm just wondering they haven't told us anything about their role. I oftentimes will go up to that person and say, James, you've been accused of being an introvert. How do you plead?
Oh no.
And as long as we get the whole kind of group laughing and just understanding that it's like, yeah, somebody's being a Machiavellian villain in this group, and the rest of
Mm.
us are voting to kill people. But it's silly, it's fun. We're allowed to have fun. We're allowed to laugh. And that's kind of the setting of the culture. We also have a folklore pledge. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, please.
I promise to not get butthurt or take personally somebody lying to me in a game where you are constantly incentivized to lie. I had to
That's great.
introduce
Well
that
done.
one. I had to
Yeah,
introduce
okay.
that one after a few games got a little curly in the early days. And it was because I realized something fundamental about social deduction games that is actually so key to kind of everything that we do now, which is when you start playing a social deduction game, you are entering a social contract that goes, if I happen to land in a seat that is one of the evil players, then I will lie to everybody in this room for 75 minutes.
Mm.
But there is no way that lie won't be exposed, either during the game or immediately afterwards when I say, and the evil team win. Evil team stand up and do a little happy dance. You've won. Because then everybody knows that you just lied to them. And so
Yeah.
effectively, when you enter that social contract, you go into a social bluffing game, you agree to lie to people for 75 minutes, you're saying, this is what it looks like when I lie. And that's an incredibly generous thing. And when we do kind of more of our training kind of workshop type things, the evil players are the most important people in that after game reflection, because they can tell people what worked, what didn't work in terms of disrupting them, in terms of lying to them, in terms of how they were hoodwinked.
Yeah, it's a wild thing as well, because you are exercising parts of you that then you don't necessarily have on display, or that you want people to know about, which is also just a strange thing to be doing. Do you feel like, because we're so used to watching people play, and we're used to watching, yeah, like you mentioned, reality TV and all of these sorts of spaces, that then being it's almost like we have this untapped hunger to be in that situation ourselves, but we just didn't realize, like, we are the social media experiment in that moment of playing the game.
Yeah, I've tried marketing it as the idea of like a reality TV show just between you and your
Sure.
friends, because I think that it's like oftentimes we think, oh, it would be really fun to be on Survivor, or it'd be really fun to
Yeah.
be on The Traders, but it's not necessarily fun to sign your life away to be completely misrepresented and edited into oblivion. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody thinks exactly the same way
No.
as I do about that, but yeah, I certainly feel like if I've seen some of those contracts for those reality TV shows, and they're scary things.
Yeah, you don't want that. I feel like folklore is a much nicer entry into that, just for sure. I want to move on now, just briefly. I feel like we could talk about folklore for a long time, but and rightly so. It's a brilliant, brilliant concept. But in this whole world with play and hobbies, and even folklore itself, we're creating a lot of communities, and out of that comes connection and all sorts of things that people are needing more and more in our really digitized world. Talk to me about your experiences with communities and how that links back into, I suppose, your enthusiasm for different hobbies, and then, of course, folklore. Because I know you've had some dabbling in the world of D&D, and you've created some incredible community groups around that. Take me on that journey on the community point of view.
Yeah, I think in the midst of all of this, community is almost the most important factor. I've
Great.
been reading a lot of research recently around the idea that multifaceted identities are statistically good for mental health. So
Hmm.
instead of viewing ourselves as just one thing, for instance, like the easiest one for me to go back to is I'm an accountant or I'm a lawyer,
Sure.
and we
Yeah.
base everything about our identity around that one thing of this is what I do for work, which I think is a trap that a lot of young people, particularly millennials, have fallen into over the years. But to be able to say, I'm an accountant, pet parent, I'm a green thumb, I'm a surfer, I love lawn care, I'm a lawn addict, and all this stuff is actually statistically like it people with multifaceted identities are happier people.
Right.
And so that's incredibly important. But the second part of it that actually makes the jump sort of more statistically significant is if those identities feel integrated. So if the different facets of your personality create a portrait that makes sense to you
Mm.
and to some degree the world around you. And I think to some degree, this is something that I haven't done particularly well in my life because I was playing footy for Western Australia when I was 15 and I was also a drama kid, and those two worlds clashed like nothing else, you
Yeah.
know?
That doesn't
And
surprise me.
and those kind of clashes create a kind of cognitive dissonance. And I
Mm.
think one of the things that is so important is that community, really good community, and also really niche community, like the smaller it gets, actually, in a lot of ways, the better it is,
Mm.
creates a sense of belonging, creates a sense of external evidence that people like me do things like this.
Mm.
And if we can actually see that, and this is why representation is so important, right? Being able to see other people like you doing the thing that you want to do or doing the thing that you do and going,
Mm.
I feel validated, I feel safe, I feel good in that space. So yeah, I think even though I only read this research recently, I feel like I've kind of always intrinsically understood that to be true. I felt loneliness a lot throughout the course of my life. And so when
Mm.
I love something, I often try to look for the others.
Yeah, great.
And sometimes when I look for the others, I find a lot of people that don't look like me.
Mm.
And that can be an isolating experience. And so at times, what I've decided to do at that point is be the beacon instead
Yeah, great.
and go, I don't know, this is me. I do this thing too. If you're like me and you like this thing, well, then maybe there's a place for both of us in this particular subculture or community.
That's a pretty brilliant trait to have, because I would say most people would be like, oh, no one else is here that looks like me, or I don't feel seen, and go, I need to hide. So to then take it the other way and to get confidence to be able to say, okay, well, if I'm going to do it anyway. So if you want to come for the ride, then come along. Do you feel like you're actively aware of that effort involved to be that beacon, to use your words? Like, does that come at a cost to you, or is it becoming more effortless?
It does. There's no question that being a beacon and trying to build community comes with emotional labor. Like
Mm.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. If this is something that you're attracted to or interested in, it ain't easy. Um,
Yeah.
it's sort of, I was reading something very similar about like Seth Godin talking about the idea of like, just try to understand whether you're competing in a market or trying
Mm.
to build a market, because
Yeah,
competing in
right.
a market is much easier than creating a market,
Mm.
because oftentimes you're creating the demand for the thing that you've created. And this is a similar thing, right? But there's this old adage or this kind of convention in cartography from years and years and years ago that talks about the idea of, well, like in the olden days when a map wasn't filled in all the way, when there were uncharted territories,
Mm.
cartographers would draw pictures of sea monsters and dragons in those areas and write the words, here be dragons, in
Mm.
places that had been thus far unknown, uncharted, because they wanted to keep people safe, right? They wanted to say, stay within the realms of what we know and what we've uh, discovered so far, because if you go out there, there will be monsters and they'll eat you. And people, generally speaking, metaphorically, when you encounter this in your life, react one of two ways. Oh, great, that's a good boundary for us and me. I'm going to stay inside that and stay safe.
Mm.
And then the other one is, well, do I venture forth and make the way clear so that it's safe for other people to follow in my footsteps?
Mm.
And so in life, when you're faced with these problems and the emotional labor that comes with them, or the personal risk of failure that comes with it, you have to just know there are dragons ahead.
Yeah.
And do you want to stay where it's safe, or do you want to make the way safe for those that follow in your footsteps?
Mm. I love that. It probably comes down to a value-based thing as well. And the more you know your values, then the more you can choose to step into, wherever the dragons may lay, because you know that you're going to be more content and more happy despite the cost, because you're making decisions in line with your values, rather than trying to just to give up or to hide away and do something that goes against you. So I really love that as a concept. And I love as well all of the ways that you're explaining things are highly creative. So it's like, yeah, don't just tell an antidote, Mike. Tell it with dragons. And that is perfect. And it's so good. Wouldn't want it any other way. I want to talk as well. You mentioned before about niche community groups, and obviously you mentioned D&D. Run clubs are the big thing now. Maybe they're getting a bit too big for my liking. As soon as anything gets too big, I'm out. I don't like it. Do you think that like that respect for the niche group, the small sort of community group is being more respected? Because I feel like growing up, the kids who might have been playing D&D definitely weren't as socially accepted as they are now, and for millennials anyway, in that we are. Uh, I feel like it's changed. Gen Z seems to be more accepting than we ever were. But do you feel like you've seen that as well in the community groups that you've been a part of or been across?
Yeah, I mean, like something like Dungeons and Dragons, obviously through Stranger Things, and then through the
Mm,
rise of the show Critical Role, and then through Brennan Lee Mulligan and the incredible folks at Dropout and the D&D streams that they do, they've like exploded in popularity. Critical Role has an Amazon like cartoon now that is massively
yeah,
popular.
wow.
They had the most successful Kickstarter of all time in the entertainment space
Wow.
of all time. Like, not, it's just crazy. Um,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people, I think, have seen themselves well represented in those places. But I think also inherent within that, there there are a couple of interesting stories that stand out to me. So one is the actor Joe Manganiello. So Joe was one of I think he might have been the head werewolf on True Blood back in the
Right.
day. Formerly married to Sofia Vergara, once voted the sexiest man alive. Huge D&D nerd,
Amazing.
loves D&D. But for Joe, he has absolutely been an advocate for D&D. He's been involved in the community at large, but his home game that he plays is predominantly other Hollywood types,
Mm.
writers, directors, actors, and powerlifters.
Okay.
Uh, and so for Joe, in his own micro community, his own niche within a niche, he has gone and collected a bunch of people that are as much like him as possible and
Mm.
give him that sense of people like me do things like this, and gone, let's do it together. And I think that that is what I advocate for the most, because that is what seems to, in terms of the research, create the most integrated sense of identity and the most
Mm.
positive mental health benefits. Now, that's not to say that we should ignore people that don't look like us at every opportunity, but and absolutely we should try to find the kind of common ground in and amongst the diversity. But there is power also in seeing people that look like us doing the things that we love. And I think that in those niche communities, because we have the visibility of the internet, which is not a mainstream, it is a million micro streams,
Mm.
it makes it that much more discoverable for us to find. Oh, look at that. There is a group for Amish men who like to, do X, Y, and Z. Like there's
Great.
a community for everything.
There sure is. One of my favorite communities that I stumbled across completely by accident, and this is probably too much of a share, and I apologize to my partner who I'm about to throw into the deep end. But he is quite a hairy guy, and in the journey of us dating, I realized how there's a huge subset of like hairy men Instagram profiles that has a sub niche community that people are really passionate about. And I didn't know this existed. I haven't since joined up to anything, but it was just really illuminating to this world. And you may not know, Mike, that there is this sub community for people that are very hairy to to love on each other. I don't know, to support
I
each
love
other.
that. Appreciation for the bears out there. You guys rock. Well
Yeah,
done.
yeah,
Solidarity.
exactly. Anyway, there's a really unhinged, relatable story for you. But anyway, it just came to mind, and I'm very sorry to my partner. Please don't listen to this. So we should move on before I give you any more inappropriate stories. I want to finish with obviously the big stuff, the big takeaways, the notes to self. In the title, and I always need a lot of nuggets. I want to start more broadly, though, first about your notes to self that you've gathered for community. Maybe even if it's like people hesitating, like me, to get involved with booking folklore, or wanting to sign up for the run club or try out their first D&D club. What have been your notes to self that have really helped you in that space along the way?
Yeah. Note to self: there is no substitution for face-to-face communication. Um,
Hmm.
Getting in a room with other physical humans in a physical room in a physical place, doesn't matter how good the technology gets, doesn't matter how immersive and escapist the world
Hmm.
is that your video game creates. Magic happens when humans get together face to face and share experiences together and communicate. um, if you are feeling sad, if you are feeling lonely, if you are feeling any kind of way, touch grass, spend a little bit less time on the internet, go
Yeah.
meet some people in face to face. I don't care if it is a poetry jam or a live music event or a folklore or an arcade or whatever, even if it's just going and saying hello to your barista and asking how their day was. Um,
Mm.
there is no substitute for real physical face to face interaction. Um,
Mm.
and I think as a world, we have become much, much, much more working from home, living in
Mm.
isolation. You know, there is this weird thing with influencers right now, and I think there's so many people that are cultivating these personas, these visual personas that are like, here's how I spend 3 hours of my morning optimizing myself in pure isolation. And you know what is actually optimizing for humans? Socializing. Like, we are a
Yeah.
social people. So yeah, so please join us in the real world. I also read a study recently, speaking of a
Mm.
poetry slam or going to the theater or what have you, that if you spend 100 hours a year or roughly 2 hours a week engaging in the arts, there is a significant uptick in mental health. So
Oh,
that's another one in there as well.
win. Well, I think that's a big win for both of us. I'm putting what you do in the arts, and I'm putting what I do in the arts. So we're just going to be the most well-rounded people ever. Um, I really like that, though. I think that's really an important reminder, and especially here's another fun fact for you that you may know. Our radio station burnt down 6 months ago, so we've been doing a radio show not in the studio, not with people. And let me tell you, it's like a COVID 2.0, and it is not good. So 100% with you on that journey, not fun. And to finish, Mike, let's take it to the personal level of you right now, Mike Drysdale. What is your note to self that you're currently trying to remind yourself of? Whether it's something that you feel like you're succeeding, or maybe it's a work in process. What's your sort of big note to self that's sitting with you at the moment?
Yeah, I've got one of these. It absolutely hit me like a ton of bricks recently when I saw it. It was the first time I'd ever been introduced to this particular phrase. Other people may have heard it before, but I think it's just one to listen to a couple of times, hit back 15 seconds and just listen to it a couple of times
Yeah, great.
when I say it, and just let it really sink in, which is anxiety will try to keep you in motion when the work is to be still.
Mm. I laugh awkwardly because I don't like it.
Yeah. Neither did I.
I know. It's too real. Say it again, though, so that we can sit with it and be still and a bit uncomfortable for a second.
Anxiety will try to keep you in motion when the work is to be still.
Well, Mike Drysdale, with that uncomfortable
existential crisis.
Yes, yeah. We will now end and go and cry for a little bit and sit in silence. No, but thank you so much for joining me on Note to Self in my work that's keeping me busy at the moment. And I really appreciate all your insights. And if you do, make sure you jump online and you Google folklore, you book a session, and you maybe invite me and I'll come. I'll come with it. Maybe I'll get brave enough. But no, I really appreciate your time and all your insights and joining me on Note to Self.
Thanks for having me.